Alright, welcome back audiophiles. We're talking about BEAT11 today, which is basically layering a drum track on top of a sample. So BEAT11, we're going to be talking about how you can screencast music, use the Fruity video player to take that music out of your screencast, and then record it into Edison. We're going to find and define some loop points in Edison, which will allow us to actually make sure that we establish a groove with our sample. Then we're going to fit our sample to a tempo. We're going to pick 100 beats per minute because we're going to take the tracks that we create as a class and we're going to put them together. We're going to kind of mash up different tracks that we pick as individual students. And to do that, we simply can make them all 100 beats per minute and we can play around with them. Lastly, we're going to layer a drum track on top of the sample, and we're going to make those loops play 8 times so we have a little bit of a track going. So let's start off by finding a sample. I found a sample right here, so I'm going to record this in Edison, or I'm going to record this with our Windows Game Bar. You can use whatever kind of video recording software you want. So I'm going to record this and take a little piece of it to use as a loop. So I've got my sample ready. Now all I have to do is go into FL and put it into Edison. So I'm going to go into FL Studio here. I'm going to use the video player, the FL video player. So right here in the sampler, I'm going to go in here and replace that sampler with the Fruity video player. My Fruity video player, I'm going to unlink from playing with my transport control. So I'm going to click on this little link right here, and then I'm going to open that recording that I just created. So if I go to video, I go to my captures, I'm going to find that video that I just recorded. Here it is. Now I don't really want the whole song. I played a little bit extra for you, but really there's a certain section that I want which doesn't have any drums in it yet, and that's what I'm actually going to use as my sample. Let me find where that is here. I think it's about here. Find where that spot is. Here it is. This is the section I want. So let me find where that is. Yeah, right about about here? Alright, so I'm going to open Edison now, which is my, if you look up here at the very top, it's our scissors with our waveform. If we open that up, then we'll be able to record what's going on. I'm going to press record right here, and then I'm going to play back that video file. So here we go. Alright, now I have a general idea of my loop, and I know that I have everything that I want in there, but in order to loop it properly, I have to set my beginning and my end points to work really well, so that way it kind of establishes a flow. So first, I want to find where the beginning of my loop should start. So if I press play here, it's right a little bit before that, or a little bit before where I stopped. So if you take the bottom part of your scroll bar right here, and you put your mouse over the edge of it, you can actually zoom in or out on that particular entry. So I'm going to scroll to kind of zoom in to where the beginning of this loop should be. And I'm going to click on the left side of where Edison is to try to get my sample to start where I want. I can put it kind of where I want it. You can see each beat that's happening here. If you have spectral view, it makes it even easier to see. You can also use your mouse wheel to scroll in and out on the waveform to see where your point is going to start. If I press play here, that's pretty close. Let's see about this point right here. Let's say I want it right here. Yeah, that's the first beat that I want in there. And then I get to choose where I want my beat to end. So let's press play here. Right about there is where I want my loop to stop and to start again. Now there's an entry in Edison itself, which you can see up here. It looks like a little infinity loop. If you click that little infinity loop, that is to get the selection that you pick to play over and over again. So if I play this, it will keep on looping over and over again. So once again, how did I do that? Right up here in the top left, there's a loop button right here. If you click on that loop button, it's going to loop through whatever you selected in Edison down here below. It's going to keep on playing that over and over again. So this will allow you to refine your loop and make sure that it plays the right way. For example, if I had something that was too short, if I played from right here and I pressed loop play, go. So I've got it right where I want it to be. I have that selection ready. I know that this loop is going to groove okay. What you should do is you should spend a little bit of time to make sure that you zoom in and you get these points exactly where you want them to be, so that way your loop section doesn't sound bad. You want to make sure that you start off with some good points, and that if you just listen to it in Edison with this loop playback, that it would sound good. That works for me. Now that I have this loop point set, I'm going to drag it into my arrangement, and I could do that one of two ways. I could either click this top right area right here where there's a file drag, or I could click on this to simply enter it directly into the playlist at the beginning, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click this right here. Also, it would be a good idea for you to save this sample as a loop for later purposes. Whenever you work on this kind of stuff, you never know when you're going to come back and want to use a loop that you've come up with before. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this file by clicking on the disk right here with the plus. and I can save it as something else. I'm going to call this Starfish Loop. Alright, this track was made by Alexander Vinter, who's a pretty good FL Studio user himself. So now I've got my sample here in my project. What we're going to do is the same thing that we did with our last project, which is to fit this to a tempo. So I'm going to click on the top left of this sample, and I'm going to click on Fit to Tempo, and I'm just going to choose the estimated tempo synchronization here, and now it's going to fit it to whatever tempo I put here. So if I make this 100 BPM, it's going to say restretch all channels. I can say yes, and now it restretched this to work with this many measures here. Now we notice this this sample isn't quite fitting exactly on all the bars that I want. I want it to loop in a fashion to where it can go for 8 bars. Let's see what it sounds like right now. If I change this to song playback and press play, now it's at 100 beats per minute, so it's going to sound a little bit different. Alright, so the timing of this beat is a little bit different from some that you may be dealing with. This one plays for 6 measures or 6 bars, and then it repeats itself. Yours will probably be 4 or 8 bars, but basically we have a loop point now that we can add drum samples to the top of. So I'm going to take this sample and I'm going to copy it. To copy it, you can simply select it by holding down Control and clicking on the sample. Then you can hold down Shift and you can drag a copy out. Alternatively, you can select the sample over here on the left side of your playlist control, and then you can draw to set some additional beats. So now I have a sample that will play. Let me speed it up just a little bit for the sake of making it faster here. Alright, so I have that ready. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that this sample has a mixer channel. So I'm going to go to its instrument here in the channel rack here. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to just make sure that I have a channel assigned to it. I can do that by holding down Control and pressing L, or I can select its mixer track manually right here on the left side panel of where its instrument is listed. Control L is a better way to go though, because it will actually list out what it's called and it will color it and everything for you right here, so it makes it easy to see. When I press play, you can see that the sound is playing through that channel. Now what I want to do is I want to take this channel and I want to apply a very crude low pass or a low cut filter to it. Before we use the parametric equalizer, which is an effect slot. If you go here to slot and you assign a parametric equalizer, you could do that. I'm going to show you how to make quick adjustments with the coarse parametric equalizer, which is on every mixer channel. In every mixer channel, you're going to see this slot over here, and down here towards the bottom right, you're going to see that this is actually an equalizer. And so it doesn't show you all the fancy graphics like the parametric equalizer does, but if we wanted to take the lows out, we can still use this equalizer over here to do that. So I can simply click over here on the graphical display right here. I'm going to say, alright, my lows, I want to bring those lows out. I want to cut them out of there. And the highs, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of the highs out too. So basically I'm going to cut out all the low end of this sample, and I'm going to take a little bit of the high end out, so I just have these mid-range instruments that will play through. Let me press play and see what that sounds like. So that first kick at the very beginning of the sample, you barely hear that now because of the way that I've cut out the low frequencies of the sound. I also took a little bit of the high frequencies out because I might want to add my own hi-hats and my own cymbal sounds on top, and if I do that, it's going to compete unless I cut them down a little bit. So this should make it to where now I have low end that I can play with, and also I have a little bit of room on the high end where I can put my own stuff. Now that I have this sample ready, I can start layering a drum beat on top of it. To do that, I can simply add a new instrument. I'm going to add in the FPC, so I'm going to click on the plus sign here. I'm going to add the FPC onto this beat. Let's see if I can find that here. There it is. Alright, so I have my FPC ready. I'm ready to add a pattern on top of this sample. To do that, I'm going to click over here on the top left of my arrangement window. You can click on what looks like a little keyboard, and if you click on that, these are your patterns. So you have your patterns, you have your audio sounds, and you have your automation clips up here on the left. So this is how you can choose between those three things. In this case, we have our sample, which is right here. I haven't renamed it. I should probably do that. If I right click on it, I can rename what it's called. I'm going to call this the name of the song that this is called, Starfish Sample. And now when you see it in the track, it's called Starfish Sample. I'm going to go into my my musical patterns, and I have pattern 1 here. I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call this drum track. So how did I do that? I right clicked on it, and then there's a rename and color section. You could also press F2 to be able to rename anything that you want. So now I have a pattern called drum track, and I have a sample called Starfish Sample, the one that I just recorded. I'm going to go into where it says drum track, and I'm going to put it down right here in an empty spot. Now right now my drum track pattern hasn't been filled out yet. That's why it's blank and empty right now, but we're going to fill that in right now. So as you can see, we're working on the pattern of drum track right here. We renamed pattern 1 to drum track, so that's why it's called that. And now I can enter in a drum track here. So let me listen to the track, and I can actually put in some drum information here by going to the piano roll and adding in any instrument that I want. I have them all right here. You can click on the left hand side over here to play the sound. You can also click in to add a part to this track. So when I do that, you're going to see it show up both up here in your channel, and you're also going to see it over here on the right in your instrumentation, because I put the pattern down to play at the beginning here. So I'm just going to start off by putting some kicks in there. I'm just putting kicks down. I'm putting them down at the beginning of every one of these numbers that you see up on the top. So right now in the piano roll, you can see there's number 1, 2, 3, and so on. These are all the bars of this particular pattern. So the way that I have my sample set up, it lasts 6 bars. There's 6 bars for every time this sample restarts. Usually you have 4. This song is a little bit unique in that way, but I'm just going to create a drum sample to go on top of it. You're going to have, depending on what sample you use, it's going to be various lengths. This one is 6 bars long. Usually you'll find it to be 4 bars, which is the easiest to work with. So after I have my sample here laid out, and I put some kicks down, let's hear how it sounds when I play just this drum track. I'm going to make the pattern play over and over again on top of this sample. Let's see what it sounds like. In fact, I'll put one more of these samples. There we go. So let's see what happens when I play this. So I already have the beginnings of what could be a drum track here. I've only put the kick down, but I could put something else in on top of that. I could start adding some snare sounds, some hi-hats. There's a lot that can be done there. I'm going to use a more simple track to show you what you can do with loop points. So right now this starfish sample, I'm just going to take this out. I'm going to find another track real quick, something that I have already created in the past. So I'm going to go to my Edison player here. I'm going to try this waveform, which I'm sure you're familiar with. I'm recording in Edison this track. Alright, I'm going to take this track, I'm going to find the loop point just like I did before. I'm setting the beginning of my loop. And I want to set the end point as well. 1 second. Find this loop point. That's where I want it to end, right there. Perfect. So I'm going to take this track, I'm going to drag it into my sample here, and I'm going to, or into my arrangement window. I'm going to fit it to the tempo. And now it's about 2 measures long in this case. So if I replay this over and over again. Alright, so now I can add some snares to this. Maybe I'll make it add a snare right here. That'll work. I have to change my patterns so that way they line up properly up here. So now I have a very simple drum track here on top. There we go. So now if I wanted to layer any more instrumentation, I have the ability to do that because these are lined up now, seeing as I've fit them to this tempo. They've lined up to what I'm doing in the project. So if I change this and slowed it down, for example, if I made it 100 beats per minute instead, I could re-stretch my channels, and now it's just going to slow down that one beat to be able to fit it to the tempo. Perfect. Some things that you can do with FBC to kind of improve the sound of what you're seeing or what you're hearing with the sample that you currently have. You can go into the FBC. You'll note that over here in your channels, if you have samples, it's going to show up in the audio section of your channel rack. If you want to see all of the instruments, you simply change that from audio to all, and then you'll be able to see all your other stuff like your video player, and in this case the FBC. I have the FBC open here. Some of the things that you're going to want to do in general with the FBC is you're going to want to tune your drums to the track. If you notice that when I press play, my snare is okay, but it doesn't really sound like it's in the same key as the sample that I played. So if I press play, it sounds a little out of place. So what I can do is I can click on that instrument right here where it says snare 1. You can see the instrument that is played flash when it gets hit. What I want to do is click on that snare And I can see all the different sounds that play when that trigger is triggered. The most important knob that you're going to want to change is right up here. It's the tuning knob. It looks like there's a little tuning fork next to it. So if I change the tuning knob of this particular instrument, the snare, I can try to make it fit with the song. That sounds a bit better. Or I could lower it down if I wanted to. That's pretty good. It fits the song more than the other one. So a lot of it is just you going in. Let's see what I can do with the kick drum. I click on the kick drum, and now I can change the tuning of that particular drum. I can make it lower. There we go. So I have a drum track layered on top of a sample track here. What you could do from this point is, if you wanted to add a little bit more to it, you'd want to put some hi-hats in there. So let me put some hi-hats on there and see what it sounds like. I'm just going to start by making one long note here. That's my closed hat long note. I'm going to select this note by holding down Control and selecting that closed hat. Now if I go into my tools, I can go and chop it. So I'm going to click on Chop, and you can see that it separates my notes into a bunch of little notes here now. And your chopper menu here allows you to choose how many you want. So I can chop this one note into this many notes. Let's see what this sounds like. Okay, I can add more in there. Or I can add more. You'll notice that you can add or change whatever multiplier you want to this. This is probably a bit too much if you're going to have it constantly happen. So I'm going to start with this one. And now I'm going to select just certain spots where I want there to be more instrumentation or more of those notes than others. So let's say I want right here, I want to have a little flourish or something extra happen right there. I can simply go to my chop tool and I can make it have a little few more notes. There we go. So I'm selecting just certain spots where I want there to be more notes. I'm going to go back to the chop tool. You can also press Alt-U to be able to do this. You click on the tool icon right here and then go to Alt-U. We're going to talk about quick chop a little bit later, which is a faster way to do this, but for now, let's see how this works. Oftentimes you'll also have an open hi-hat somewhere, so I'm going to put the open hi-hat over here on the end. There we go. Alright, I've got a little bit of a beat here. If we sped this up, it would still go in time with the sample that we have. So I'm going to put this at 120 BPM. And press play. If I don't like the sound of my drum kit, I can change it after the fact very easily by going up here to my presets and right-clicking on that and I have all these different drum kits that I could potentially use. So I'm going to try it out with this jazz kit and see how that sounds. I don't have to change anything else, it's just changing what samples are loaded up into this drum kit. Alright, so there we go. We've got a nice hi-hat track that's chopped up using the chopper tool. We've got our low kick and our snare that play pretty simple beat, just the oompa style beat. And we have our sample, which has been fit to the tempo, so we can change it to whatever sample we want or whatever speed we want. If I wanted it to play at 145 BPM, I could do that. It's going to change the speed of the sample that I have, and it will also play back the drum track that I wrote at that new speed. Alright, excellent. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to create a video file of you playing this section of your FL project. You should have your sample and your drum track play a decent amount of times. I'd like it to be about 8 times in a row, so whatever drum track you make it play back 8 times. And I'd like your sample to play back underneath that as many times as it needs to match up with your drum track. So here we go. We have a nice little sample that is layered up to the tempo, and we have a drum track that goes to that tempo as well. Perfect. Alright. I hope you have fun with this. Make sure you pick a sample that you like and try layering some interesting drums on top of it. You can have drums that match up perfectly what's going on with the sample. Usually that sounds better, so spend a little extra time on this to make sure that you enjoy the product that comes out. The drums don't have to match up perfectly with the sample, but you do have to establish some kind of groove that sounds pretty good. If you just put in random drum notes everywhere, it'll show that you didn't put a whole lot of attention into trying to make it sound good. So please try to do that, but also make sure that you have fun with it. I'm eager to see what you come up with. I hope you enjoy.